Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw us some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Nile.
And we have been fully morbing out all week.
We're going to do this 2 weeks in a row?
We've been. I mean, sorry, does it ever stop?
No, I don't think it ever stops. If you want... Okay, by the time we release this, yes, so we'll have gone up on the Patreon, so we can talk freely.
Yes, we may speak freely about our Morbius experience.
So the wonderful support of our Patreon allowed me to buy a portable recorder that now lets us record live commentaries for movies, along with other stuff in the future. We have plans. We have ideas. We don't have plans. There's nothing actually planned.
Nothing concrete yet.
So we bought a portable recorder, and the first thing we did with it was do a live commentary of the hit movie Morbius.
Yeah.
By threat to the Discord, effectively.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
That's how I'm seeing it, at least. They might see it differently, but that's how it felt to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, check out our Patreon. But I mean, I don't know. Ever since then, I've been kind of like morbed up. You know, I've been really feeling morbed. I've got a bad case of the morbs.
I have been able to catch balls that are thrown behind me without looking.
Yeah.
It really, you think of the great like power reveal scenes in superhero movies. You know, you think of like Tobey Maguire doing stuff up on the testing out all the limits of his powers and his web shooters and stuff. You think of Captain America busting out and everything. And then you think of Morbius throwing a ball really hard and catching it,
or
and it frankly top of the cannon.
Yeah, no, he caught that ball in this like really insane morb way, sort of where he's got where it's like all this morb energy sort of directing his newly morbed ears to catch the frequencies of the ball as it moved around, and he does it perfectly. And
you got to respect Jared Leto's choice to play Morbius as the most boring, basic boilerplate doctor character ever. Yeah. It was a strong choice. I'm not sure it was the right one, but God damn it, it was brave.
Yeah, really, this is gonna go down in the superhero movie canon classics. So get fairly fucking on to Morbius, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Nile.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to me this week. And Nile knows it because I've been kind of messaging him all right, look, this is gonna be a 2-parter. And then today it was all right, look, I'm trying my goddamnedest to not make this 3-part episode. This is such an enormous topic.
Yeah.
This is something that I have we've run up against a lot. I say this a lot, but it's we have. This is an entire world, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we were a little simpatico because where I started with this, you were talking about Diglok, right? Is that how it's pronounced?
I believe,
we did have a listener who was helping us out with that.
Shouts out to the person on Twitter who does their best at keeping us from embarrassing ourselves.
Even if you tell me I can't guarantee, I'll remember well enough to still pronounce it correctly. So you were talking about this German occult weaponry stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I at the same time was researching something in Germany as well.
Oh, really?
However, I knew it wasn't a German specific thing and that one of the many branches of this topic happens in Germany, but many other places as well, really around the world. Um, I was researching the history of parapsychology in Germany.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So this week I decided I wanted to dig into that. We've talked about
So that's doing like psychological analysis while paragliding, right?
exactly.
Doctor on one paraglider, patient on the other.
Yeah.
The patient's on a recumbent paraglider.
Yeah, and they're like shouting like their psychological traumas across to the doc. Like it's a whole thing, and
the quickest way to solve your psychological traumas is by paragliding over the Grand Canyon and screaming them out while you're doing so.
Basically, in that heightened state, specifically in the Grand Canyon, you're just really gonna be able to, get all your problems out about your parents, about your love life, whatever you need to do, and so it's a unique practice, and in fact is one of the very few versions of psychology that does involve some alarming fatalities.
Yeah. It does have the highest mortality rate of any branch of psychology.
Yeah.
It's like extreme ironing, the most dangerous form of ironing,
Yeah. So, no, this is paranormal in nature.
Okay.
We've talked about this a little, like we've mentioned parapsychology in passing. We've brushed up against people involved with that. And I have been wanting for a long time to try, and it's kind of like theosophy where it's like, this is a huge topic.
Yeah.
I really want to talk about it, but
that's one of the things that is like, I've learned doing this show for so long is like trying to cover an umbrella thing, unless it's really well defined, is hard. And it's much easier to pick like a person, a specific event, and try to find like your window to anchor you around somewhere. Otherwise, our episodes would be sprawling and like 5 hours long.
Yeah, it's difficult, and hence why it's been
Some
difficult.
people would already say they're sprawling and too long as is, but we try to keep it a little bit tight here.
Well, I
remember when we started the show and we were like, it's gonna be around like 40 to 45 minutes an episode, and like every time we finish an episode, I look over and like it like clocks in at like an hour.
There's no chance anymore. It's just and I think too we owe that to the fact that like I think we're just too knowledgeable about these things. It's too easy to like spark conversation about these topics now because we know too much. We're too deep in it. So let me see if I can drag you deeper into another side, because what I really like about this, the reason why I was so enticed by this is like, you look at how we handle the paranormal today, and it's all this very amateur stuff versus like highly what's the term, like when Zach Bagans shit, like what they're doing,
dramatized, or like well, I mean they have a lot of like equipment and stuff, so like they do have the like technology or whatever, but it is so much of it is for show.
Yeah. The other side of it too is like it's like in a lot of what am I trying to say here? It really runs up against and tries to, I like that it tries to make it a legitimate science. It's interesting to me that there was a time where like we knew so little about how these supposed phenomena work that like they really wanted to like apply like method to it. On top of that, though, it also heavily involves a thing that I'm also very obsessed with, have mentioned on the show before, which is spiritualism, which I got really obsessed about that when I heard about the story of the Fox sisters, which that's an episode. They're basically these, I think, 3 sisters who like led a really long running, extremely popular grift, convincing people that they were like in communion with these spirits in their house and stuff. So spiritualism is like very closely related to this, and we'll get into it a little bit. So super rich history in the world of parapsychology. It's fascinating. So you see this a lot of times also referred to as psychical research.
Okay.
And this is where you kind of get this idea of like, we're going to make a legitimate academic pursuit out of these studies. But that's getting a little bit of ahead of myself here, because let's define for people who maybe don't know, what is parapsychology and psychical research? So
I know the first one. I don't know psychical research.
it's the same thing. Basically, psychical research predates parapsychology. Parapsychology is the attempt to turn it into an academic pursuit.
Oh, okay.
Psychical research was what people were doing before it had like an institution it could turn to.
Before it went corpo?
Yeah, basically.
That was the punk rock version, before the man took it over.
All the punkers were doing the psychical research stuff, and then of course we had I couldn't think of a good example because I only know punk stuff, frankly.
Yeah, I was trying to remember which was it. Vagrant? I was trying to remember who signed Nirvana. It was basically the. Yeah. Anyway, fuck it. I can't remember record labels at the moment. I'm coming up with fucking Vagrant and Lookout, and neither of those are right.
Matador.
So fuck it.
Matador
is a major indie.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's right. My bad.
That's a super
Who was
indie.
signed Street Manifesto that they were in that like horrible.
That was oh god.
They were in like a really rough situation with their record company.
What is the name of that stupid?
That's what I thought.
Victory.
Matador, Victory Records. So Victory Records is like parapsychology, and then Thomas Kalinoky, KSB Nights, and all that.
So the Pentimento Music Group would be psychical research.
Yeah.
Man, that's a
good analogy for us.
For 5 people.
And maybe 5 other people in the world. So the actual term parapsychology was coined in 1889 by the German philosopher and psychologist and member of the Society for Psychical Research, Max Dessoir. And he wrote this in a periodical called Sphinx. So here's an interesting little snippet from his article, which is titled Die Parapsychologie, and it says this. If one characterizes by para something going beyond or besides the ordinary, then one could perhaps call the phenomena that step outside the usual process of the inner life parapsychical, and the science dealing with them parapsychology. The word is not nice, yet, in my opinion, it has the advantage to denote a hitherto unknown fringe area between the average and the pathological states. However, more than limited value of practical usefulness, such neologisms do not demand. So, Dessoir is probably interesting to dig into because, like a lot of people who would join the Society for Psychical Research, he was highly skeptical and did quite a bit of debunking of mediums in the 19th century. And this is, as spiritualism's really blossoming as this like grifter's playground.
Mm-hmm.
So with the emergence of this like new religious movement of spiritualism, we simultaneously had folks who wanted to approach the phenomena in a scientific manner. But let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
Because before any of that, we can look to a particular type of guy who ended up influencing a lot of the parapsychological world. This is German physician Franz Mesmer.
Okay.
So here we have from the study of paranormal experiences and research, here's what they say about Franz Mesmer. While experimenting on the healing effects of magnets and their influences on physiological functions, for example, blood flow rates, Mesmer believed he had identified a new type of energy that flowed throughout the universe, and that the distribution of this energy within the body had a direct result on an individual's health. An unbalanced energy flow could manifest itself as a number of different neurological diseases and disorders. Treatment would involve addressing this imbalance by using the energy termed animal magnetism.
I've heard that term a lot in terms of like people talking about how people want to fuck them.
That I have no clue why that is the case, but you are right. That is how I know that term as well.
I was like, is it going to be like aether? Is it going to be like, is he going to somehow like, I know he didn't invent chi, but whatever the fuck. I was trying to think through like what energy you were going to be telling me. I would have never in 100 years gone to animal magnetism.
It's, there's a significant amount of this like early history, which is just like types of guys coming up with new types of energies.
Yeah.
But as far as animal magnetism is concerned, it's kind of the same, like mesmerism is what it would also come to be known as.
See, that makes sense. Animal magnetism, though, has such a different connotation now.
Now it does, but at the time it was it's the same thing as mesmerism. It is.
I mean, Franz Mesmer was the Mr. E of his day.
Yes. It's just like my best guess as to how that happened is because like animal magnetism, it's sort of this like all-encompassing living things have like a life force.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of like theorizing on like how that interacts with like electromagnetism at the time. So my guess is like animal magnetism became this thing of like, oh, we're like drawn to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know where this like how it changed to mean we want to fuck. I don't know.
I don't know where I could look this information up, but I need to know if any X-Men writer has ever tried to make Magneto use this particular form of magnetism. Because, like, I could totally, like, here's the thing. Comics writers are fucking nerds and will just, like, dig into all sorts of shit and, like, like, pull on any weird thread they come across to try to make something happen. And especially with, like, the 90s when it was more about just like adding different shit as opposed to like trying to like work around what is like Magneto got fucking weird where like magnetism just became a catch-all for being able to do just like anything.
Do whatever he wanted. Yeah.
I have to know if they've ever tried to use animal magnetism as a power for Magneto.
Don't even know.
God damn.
No idea.
Okay.
But if you want to Google Magneto, animal magnetism.
I'm just going to get a bunch of shirtless pics, you know?
Yeah.
Like this fucking swimsuit calendar for the X-Men.
Yeah.
92 Summer Spectacular, I think, was what it was.
Yeah, I think if you really want to picture in your mind what animal magnetism is like, just picture that in your brain, just like all the X-Men being sexy on the beach.
Yeah.
Treatment would involve addressing this imbalance by using the energy that, like I said, termed animal magnetism of a healthy magnetizer and transferring this to the patient. Initially, Mesmer utilized magnets in the healing process, but after a brief period, he discovered that they were unnecessary and that by passing his own hands or lightly touching the patient, the same effect could be obtained.
Is this where that came from?
I don't know.
The fucking like where you're like an energy massage kind of thing where you're not touching a person, you're just like passing your hands over them, channeling energies.
Maybe because like a lot of this, there's another thing that we'll get to. There's another energy bullshit thing that we'll get to that is extremely similar, and so I think probably this is like probably its origins.
I absolutely love the streamlining of this thing where he's like, okay, it's animal magnetism. It's all about magnets. I don't need the magnets anymore. I can just do it without even touching a person.
Yeah.
Like it's such like, is there a bigger like tell for a snake oil type of thing? Be like, it's all about magnetism. I got these magnets. I was here like a week ago and you were using magnets. I don't need them anymore. Just lay down on the table. I won't touch you. I definitely will be there, but close your eyes.
I'm just going to kind of hover over you a little bit very closely, but not so close. I'm going to use my animal magnetism.
I definitely don't have a stew going in the other room and I'm going to go work on that. I'm actually going to be here not touching you, but it'll be close. Just keep your eyes closed. It works better that way. Like, come on.
Okay, look. Turns out I don't need magnets. Let's ditch those. I'm just gonna kind of hover over. You know,
turns out I don't
even need to really be nearby or doing anything to them.
Yeah, I can do it over Zoom. Fuck it. Yeah. Like, come on. That's the extrapolation. Soon enough, it just like I'm gonna be transmitting energy to you through the internet.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the guy? I forget where this was, but there's like a guy who does like these energy barber things where he like pulls the bad energies out the top of your head while also I think like giving you a haircut, and he's like waving. Oh, dude. Okay, this is just me then.
That sounds fantastic.
There's a guy who like, it's been years since I looked at this, but it was like this dude who would like pull energy out of your head using like waving his hands around your head and like extracting energies, and then but I think he also like gave haircuts or something.
Oh, shoot, a little off the top. Hair or energy? A little bit of both, you know? Just a little trim.
I mean, it's like, it does kind of make sense though, because it's like, you're gonna offer this like deluxe haircut treatment where that also like it involves like releasing the bad energy. I don't know.
So what do you want today? A hot towel or an energy pole?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Maybe that's where all that shit comes from. I really don't know.
This is at my new high-end barber salon. We serve old fashions. We have like Netflix, and I also will pull your bad energy out of you while cutting your hair.
Yeah, all that negative chi is coming out.
Yeah. Do you give good haircuts? No, but we have all the amenities.
So one of Mesmer's first patients in 1773 was a woman who suffered from convulsions brought on by hysteria.
We're in good old timey medicine here. Fantastic.
This is the 18th century where we've got like a bunch of great health and scientific ideas. So Mesmer found that by using his method, he was able to control her convulsions, and through this success, his treatment and name spread, bringing an increase in patients and making the technique highly fashionable. As you do.
Yeah. Okay.
At first, the fits and seizures associated with the disorders that Mesmer treated were a common occurrence, but after viewing the method conducted by one of his students, where his patients would fall into a sleep-like state instead, this effect became more general and the convulsive aspect less common. This change in symptom response has been theorized to it being culturally transmitted, whereby individuals have a certain idea of what behavior they are expected to show, changing from convulsions to a sleep-like state. So basically, when we kind of like researched this shit that Mesmer was doing, we were like, this is a cultural thing where people are now convinced that this is the response they should have.
It's like almost the original definition of a meme, like just like a culturally transmitted like thing that it's God. There's I forget who wrote it. I think it's James Tinian IV. He has a comic series where they're like cybernetic, something else, and mimetic, and they're really fucking cool. They're really like good, interesting stories. And one is literally like based around, it's like a sci-fi story kind of around the actual definition of memes and stuff, like not in a cheeky way at all, just like actually using it as a jumping off point. And it feels like this where it's just like it just is like passed into the thing, like the cultural osmosis, as I've always called it. And I think I got that term somewhere, but I don't know. And that's cultural osmosis in and of itself.
Yep.
It is fascinating to me how these things just like grow over time.
Dude, did you see the sleep like state meme? I'm over the convulsions meme, bro.
This was like the 1800s version of planking.
Yeah, basically. I just and even better is just the fact that this is all coming from patients with quote unquote hysteria.
Yeah,
which is a fake thing.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that.
We talked about it recently on the when we watched Hexen.
Oh, you're right.
Because that kind of dives into how these women are fucked over and hysteria is prescribed and et cetera. So if you want to kind of get in, we didn't like get into it super hard, but if you want to hear us talk about that, that
was a good movie.
It was a good movie. Yeah. So Mesmer's technique eventually became the foundation for hypnosis.
Yep. Okay.
But for parapsychology, his name is associated with a behavior displayed by some of his patients while in the sleep-like state, termed quote-unquote higher phenomena. Patients would claim that they would be able to have the ability to gain access to information or events that were sensorially inaccessible to them. So for instance, describing the actions of an individual in a different room.
Okay.
And this led to studies being carried out into using this state to evoke different types of experience. For example, telepathy and clairvoyance.
Is this where stuff like the Akashic Records got started?
I don't know about the Akashic Records, but we're going to travel about 200 years to get to the fact that all this shit follows a lineage all the way up to shit like Project Stargate.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So, with the outcry made by the medical community in France against mesmerism, because it says here that they saw it as a threat to their establishment. I don't quite know what that means.
Well, I mean, it is, it's you may not get it, but your kids will love it. Like it's that kind of thing. It's Elvis coming to town and shaking his hips and people wanting to arrest him.
True. Yeah, sure. So, well, they set up commissions to investigate the claims made by mesmerists and people practicing this stuff. And the results were applauded when they came back negative. It is this research carried out on mesmerism's high phenomena, which resulted in the first examination of parapsychological phenomena being investigated outside the framework of occultist and quasi-religious settings. The results also found that by controlling test conditions, the researcher could help establish authenticity of the phenomena. And from these outcomes, mesmerism can be considered a major factor in the origins of parapsychology.
Interesting. Okay.
So there's things that predate this that but to kind of step outside of the phenomenon's sort of religious or spiritual framework and then try and study it is a relatively new thing at the time, and it sparks this idea that you could do this with a lot of different things. I mean, as far as the paranormal phenomena is concerned, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So, also, I feel like I should just explain briefly because it's important context. Spiritualism is literally this simple. Ghosts exist and they can communicate with the living. So, what will happen here is we'll have this early parapsychology, this early psychical research stuff, and then spiritualism in the early to mid 1800s will start to become a thing, and that will become a prime target for parapsychology and psychical research. So we're going to get into that, but I just want people to know what spiritualism is very briefly.
Yeah.
So ghosts can communicate with the living, and this is typically within a Christian framework because spiritualism was a primarily English-speaking world thing. And in that Christian framework, people theorized that they could use the methods of spiritualism to these mediums to contact God and angels directly.
It is interesting to think about that as a possibility, because when I think of spiritualism and stuff, I usually think about I want to talk to my husband that died, or my daughter that was killed, or whatever, or my great grandfather or some shit. But it's just walking into a psychic and being okay, who do you want to contact? I want to contact God.
Yeah. Well, this was kind of their way of saying because there are some things where even in philosophy where it feels like they were trying to make certain that these emerging ideas could fit squarely into the idea of a God existing, especially a Christian God. Because if you didn't do that, the issues you could run into as an accused atheist were harsh. So
you got to make room for God. You got to leave that room for Christ and all of your new foundings.
Yeah. Yeah. So the spiritualism movement first emerged mostly in the 1840s in New York. And it was it was very English speaking world, but it did go around the world. Beyond mediumship, we also got a lot of other ideas such as seances and automatic writing from this stuff.
Yeah.
So parapsychology itself, that stuff predates both spiritualism and the coining of its name as the psychical research. So that's what it was before. So these studies, what we can talk about the most official studies at their earliest after the mesmerism stuff start around 1853. So this is when various scientists and authors and different people, there was a chemist also who was involved. So it'd be people from these different scientific or research oriented backgrounds getting into trying to research paranormal phenomena. This is primarily in America and a few different places in Europe. And in Europe, it's a lot in England, France, and Germany.
Okay.
Now, the thing about the beginnings of psychical research was that while they were conducting these studies to prove or disprove the legitimacy of paranormal phenomena, they would often come away with positive results. Like they would be like, oh, okay, well now this proves that this phenomena is real.
Yeah.
Which I think is that aspect of it can really explain where this ends up. This leads to what is effectively a pseudoscience, and it a lot of people end up treating these claims as it's interesting because later it changes a lot over the decades, but there is a lot of we'll get into it. We'll get into it in a bit. In one particular experiment, French author Count Agenor de Gasperin conducted a study on table tipping. Have you ever heard of table tipping?
Is that the way that like seances simulate like spirits being in the room with like levers and shit underneath the tables and stuff?
Yes. So yes, that is what it is. But like to the believer, let me explain what it is.
Okay.
It is in fact a type of seance practice in which participants would form a circle around a table and they would put their hands on the table, typically. And the table is used as a means to communicate with spirits. And the way they would do this is the participants would speak letters of the alphabet in order, in turn, around the table. And when they would reach the correct letter, the table would tilt or rotate. And each time they did that, they would get like a message or it basically functioned like a Ouija board.
Yeah, okay.
So like
Ouija board with a lot of extra steps.
Yes, a lot of extra steps. They did not have a Ouija board at the time, but they would like form entire sentences from this method. And in some more extreme cases, it said the table would rise into the air, shake violently.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of theories explaining this phenomenon. Mostly people believed that spirits were communicating through the people performing the seance and moving the table to try and communicate. But there were some in the skeptical community that had alternative explanations. So Count de Gasperin had a pseudoscience-y psychical research explanation in the idea of actinic force. Which is a theoretical and esoteric energy, it's essentially just like it is energy that defies human measurement.
Okay, I was really hoping it was like table specific energy. This is specifically an energy only used to alert people of like letters by way of tables.
As far as these people know that is true, it's just literally like they're just saying like there are energies in reality that we can't see or measure, and that often gets kind of wrapped up in like a religious bent, like this is divine energies and stuff.
Okay, so it's like almost like a catch-all for anything they can't, like energy that they can't measure that could be causing this paranormal whatever.
Yes, you can think of this as like I don't know if it's necessarily the origin, but it is a lot like all those like quote unquote life energies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, actinic force theory would inspire not only the idea of ectoplasm.
Okay, yeah.
There's a whole thing that like I didn't go entirely down this road, but there were these weird fucking theories where people would just like, yeah, there's a liquid in the body that can come out of you and you can command it with your mind. Like there was straight up. But like it's not entirely related because like a lot of the psychical research people were like, no, that's not. We're all about these like unexplainable, unmeasurable like forces. Like but there's this weird like other side to it that's not a part of the psychical research of people who are just like, I think there might be liquids that I can become a waterbender. Essentially,
yeah, like, I can emit a ferrofluid from my body that I can then like mentally control.
It's very weird, and yeah, ectoplasm kind of comes from all those things, but specifically the actinic force would be what influences that idea. But like they pull a lot from this as well in like modern alternative medicine stuff and energy healing and all that bullshit that we've talked about. So
this all feels like the old timey version of a lot of things we've talked about. Mm-hmm. Like, you can
Orgon.
I was literally about to say you can find like similar stuff through Orgon and stuff as like a more 100 years later version of this. Wait, when are we?
We're like 1850s.
Okay.
1840s, 1850s.
Gotcha.
So like I had mentioned before, though, like this is also where they start bringing mesmerism into it and the quote unquote animal magnetism, which is also kind of a similar idea to the actinic force.
When were pheromones like discovered?
Just the other day.
Okay.
I honestly don't know.
In our lifetime.
That's a great question, actually. I have no idea when we came up with that idea. But
yeah,
it's, when you think about it, that is kind of invisible life force, huh?
Yeah. So Franz Mesmer or whatever should just sprinkle some deer urine on shit, get some pheromones going.
Yeah. So yeah, early psychical researchers like Count de Gasperin suggested these invisible forces emanated from the seance participants, influencing the movement of the tables. So this is the kind of stuff that they're doing.
Don't ask about the tables.
What I love about this, what I really truly love about this is like we're gonna try and tackle these paranormal phenomena in a more scientific and rigorous way. But then people we'll get to this, but like people pointed out like, okay, you didn't have somebody who was watching under the table simultaneously as somebody watching above the table.
Yeah.
To confirm anything. So your research is just like at the very least flawed. Like you didn't really conduct this in a truly rigorous way. You
missed the kicker box that the seance person has underneath the table that allows them to shift it as needed,
So on the more skeptical side of things, which is also a part of psychical research, there were people who were kind of theorizing the same thing that people theorize about Ouija boards, which is that you have these small unconscious muscular actions that would influence the movements. And because you're already thinking about like what you think the message will be, those like unconscious movements will then influence at the proper moment. You know, so you're not thinking about it, but
do you think they ever put together like an odd couple, like good cop, bad cop of psychological researchers, one of which is like very skeptical and the other one is like trying to prove it right,
That is so funny that you say that, because Nile, I have so many accounts of exactly that.
Oh my God.
And we'll get to that later. We'll get to that.
We got our Mulders, we got our Scullies. Let's go.
Beyond these theories, we also get a lot of fraud, which ran fucking...
Really?
It was
a lot of fraud in the seance community, huh?
So rampant in spiritualism. Like the movement itself is like its backbone is practically almost all frauds. It's so crazy. It's another reason why I really love learning about it. Is because like I love these people like convincing an entire town that there's ghosts fucking floating tables around, and then a lot of the times it came back around to bite them.
Yeah.
So professional magicians were quick to debunk table tipping. Chung-Ling Soo.
Don't weasel in on their territory.
Basically.
The magicians want to keep all those tricks of the trade to themselves.
Don't fuck with us.
We demand to be taken seriously,
yes. Chung-Ling Soo, a magician who is mostly famous for dying from a failed bullet catching trick.
I know that's what he's most famous for now, but it's
at the time he was also a known magician.
Yeah.
So, Chung-Ling Soo pointed out a method in which a pin was like driven into the table, and then the medium leading the seance would have a ring on their finger that had a slot that they could basically latch onto the pin, and in this way they could then manipulate the movements of the table.
Mm-hmm.
And then magician John Mulholland also had some shit to say about table tipping tricks. So these are his words exactly. Quote, "The multiplicity of methods used to tip and raise tables in a seance is almost as great as the number of mediums performing the feat. One of the simplest was to slide the hands back until one or both of the medium's thumbs could catch hold of the tabletop. Another way was to exert no pressure on the table at all, and in the event that the sitter opposite the medium did press on the table, to permit the table to tip far enough away from him so that he could get the toe of one foot under the table leg. He would then immediately put pressure on his side and, holding the table between his hands and his toe, move it about at will. By this method, a small table can be made to float 2 feet off the floor. Another method was to catch the underside of the tabletop with the knee, and still another was merely to kick the table into the air. So, literally the easiest possible shit. And this fucking moron is like standing around looking at these guys like tilt these tables and be like, yes, okay, I believe we have a confirmation of this phenomena. It's like, this is a significant portion of your attempt to make this an academic rigor.
If a table ever starts to levitate, someone without warning just shove it down to the floor. And if this person running the seance yelps, you look, you got yourself a fraud.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. Another early psychical researcher was German astrophysicist Johann Carl Friedrich Zolner. Like Count de Gasperin and others before him, he was interested in a physical scientific explanation for paranormal and psychic phenomena. So, on the German side of things, in 1877, he would conduct seance experiments with so-called medium Henry Slade. In these experiments, they tested a number of things. This would be things like Slade's ability to pull coins out of sealed boxes.
Cool. Good trick.
Like tying of knots onto string, which I believe is meant to be like automatic and without. I don't know exactly how it works, but that's how it was always described.
He just wanted to see some cool knots.
He wants to see some cool knot tricks. But most importantly, Slade's most famous ability. That is automatic chalk writing onto stone slates. So we'd have these like slates that like writing would appear on that were made of stone.
Oh, so it's not like automatic writing where like he's not controlling it. It like literally just appears.
It certainly seems that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I know he's got a trick to it. I'm just trying to make sure I understand what's going on. Because like I think when I think of like automatic something, I think of like automatic drawing.
Yes.
Where you're just like in a trance and you're
not
just
like that.
Scribbling all over
the writing is appearing on the thing.
Gotcha.
So yeah, Slate would fail some of Zolner's experiments, but somehow Zolner would come away convinced that a number of Slate's seances were authentic.
I love how it's like this is the establishment of like the science of this stuff. They didn't try very hard.
They did a bad job. They did a very bad job. And the thing is, Zolner is like a respected like astrophysicist for his time. Like,
really?
I think there's a crater on the moon named after him. So like he wasn't like a total moron, but like I hear him like I hear this.
You know, he doesn't he's not like worthless.
He doesn't like suck shit or anything. He just like I don't know how he was fooled by this, I guess.
I really feel like there was a lack of full-blown skepticism for this kind of stuff. Like,
yeah, probably.
For at least for these people. Like we see it every fucking day. People being hoodwinked into believing anything just because they want to.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, these people could be very intelligent people. They could, outside of this area of belief, they could be totally logical, whatever the fuck. But in this particular instance, they want to believe that this shit is real. So they just go for it.
I don't know enough about the man himself to like give you a read on like whether or not he was like some sort of believer, but he is very interested in the phenomena to the point where he wanted to study it. So
alternately, the people are paying him off and he was making that cheddar.
That could be it. I kind of doubt it. But the thing is, there is a reason. Like he had a reason because he had a theory about what these things were, about what the phenomenon, what paranormal phenomenon were. So Zolner theorized that spiritualist phenomena were the result of four-dimensional physics, and that if there are spirits, they are possibly fourth-dimensional entities.
We're all about 5D now. We're going for the fifth dimension.
Right.
This guy really
one lagging behind.
Yeah.
It's time to get on that 5D chess, brother. So Zolner would pass away in 1882, but a number of decades after his death in 1924, the magician Harry Houdini would publish the book A Magician Among the Spirits, which included a reproduced and signed confession to trickery from Slade.
Oh, okay.
So basically, this other this ex-medium, a former medium who had abandoned the practice, named Remigius Weiss, had a conversation with Houdini and like showed him this confession that he had that was signed by Slade saying all the shit that I did was fake. He even like went to trial for fraud.
Really? Okay.
For doing this stuff. So it was a big deal at the time. And Houdini, actually, I didn't know this about him, but I discovered in reading about all this, one of Houdini's like big things was trying to debunk spiritualism.
Yeah.
He was really into that.
He's one of those. He was holding fast on the. Hey, I can do magic, but your shit sucks.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So this is the world of early psychical research. There's a lot of fraud and bullshit that some researchers attempted to take seriously. Many of these early experiments would come under further scrutiny as the field of psychical research and eventually parapsychology would develop. But foundationally, we can basically call psychical research mostly a pseudoscience. As for spiritualism, entire topic of its own, but it's a primary motivating force for the existence of parapsychology and some of the more skeptical researchers that worked in that field.
Did you ever have a Houdini phase?
I had a magic phase.
Okay.
I had a phase where I really wanted to learn magic tricks.
Fair.
Houdini was just one of a number of names that like came up when I would read about the topic, but I don't think I like went hard into one particular person.
I just remembered that I read like a Houdini biography of some kind. It was obviously for like some level of children because I was in the second grade. But I had a time that I was reading a bunch about Houdini, and I had entirely forgotten about that until this moment. This podcast really brings back memories.
It's one of those things that like, yeah, it's like dinosaurs and shit. Like you just think it's like cool, and you just really get into it. Yeah.
Over the course of like first and second grade, I went through like dinosaurs, Greek and Roman mythology, the planets, Houdini, and then pretty soon after I started getting into like James Bond and like detective and secret agent shit. So I totally forgot that I read a fucking Houdini biography back in because I that was why as soon as you said you didn't know that he was like into debunking spiritualism. I for some reason just had a crystal clear memory of reading some shit about that when I was very young.
Yeah, I didn't have a Houdini phase, but I did have a phase where I knew a couple of card tricks.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was one that involved forcing all 4 jacks to the top of the deck. But the one that I was super proud of involved taking a quarter and folding paper around it and then tearing up the paper, revealing that there's no quarter in the paper anymore, and then pulling it out of my mouth.
Nice.
So I did that for a little while. I had to have been like 10, 11 years old. So yeah, I don't know. I had a magic phase, but not like a magician phase. You know?
Maybe we should both just start doing sleight of hand magic.
Yeah, let's get really into that. We can just like we can start a podcast about it where it's all audio and you just hear like the riffling of like card shuffling and coins.
There have to be sleight of hand magic ASMR videos.
Absolutely.
Like that's obvious. Like I listen to people shuffle cards sometimes when I'm like Instagram. I follow a bunch of sleight of hand magic people and shit, and their videos are just very soothing of them just doing shit with cards and
maybe we could start the first sleight of hand magic / mukbang channel and just like have like really sloppy meals while we
this week I'm gonna eat a big plate of buffalo wings while doing sleight of hand magic.
Yeah, could be fun. The wings and magic seems like a challenge, but I would be into that. Now, it's also important to mention that both parapsychology and spiritualism evolved on similar but occasionally deviating like timelines in different parts of the world. For instance, like I found that the table tilting seance, as far as I could find, it was like first performed in the United States, but then the practice of it like really quickly moved to Europe, and then in Europe it became like the primary or like most popular form of like seance and mediumship for a time. Whereas like in America, we also had a lot of like rappings and things and like disembodied voice stuff and all this stuff that all kinds of things. So it's all happening at this like about the same time, but a few years off from each other in some cases. Because then of course it as these things like would become popular in different areas of the world, then it would come under the gaze of psychical research. The spiritualism movement also owes a lot of its ideas to Sweden and Germany. This is basically early psychical research technically begins in Germany a few decades before we can really give it any official term with all that mesmerism stuff I mentioned.
Okay.
And then that starts to spread everywhere else. So let's say here we're in the second half of the 19th century now. And a few things happen here, and I think we'll be better served. It'll be easier if we just split this history into the different countries in which the study of parapsychology developed. And right off the bat, I just want to say that I know it was a thing in France, but I had trouble finding enough to like justify like a dive into like how France. We'll get into France, but it'll like come later.
Okay.
Germany, London, and America were like the three big names in this like later half of the 19th century in parapsychology. So in the first half of the 19th century in Germany, spiritualism was already very popular, but scientific research into the phenomena was not especially common, but it did happen. The first half, like I said, mainly concerning Franz Mesmer and mesmerism. This began to change in the 1870s. So here I have something from the Parapsychology Foundation of New York's Lyceum Library, which is a fascinating website and an absolute bitch to navigate. Really cool website.
I feel like I've looked at that site before.
It's really cool. There's a lot of info on there. It is really hard to find the things you're looking for. So here's what it says. Two factors contributed to a change in the situation. One, in 1874, the journal Psychische Studien appeared under the editorship of Alexander Axelko, and for nearly 50 years, it was the most important German parapsychological journal. And then in 1877 to 1878, the aforementioned astrophysicist Friedrich Zolner held his experimental seances in Leipzig with Henry Slade. So those were the two really big tipping points in Germany for parapsychology. And we get some pushback on early psychical research that begins to change the approach. In particular, this pushback came from German psychologists. And a lot of people were heavily influenced by German philosophy, too. So that's where they were kind of trying to get their how they could, like, think about these ideas.
Yeah, trying to expand the mind in a bunch of different directions at once.
Yeah.
Using, all of these different disciplines, Yes. Okay. Cool.
So we get pushback, especially on Zolner and his experiments. So among Zollner's opponents was the founding father of German experimental psychology, Wilhelm Wundt, who was convinced that Slade's manifestations were produced by trickery and who feared, moreover, that the assumptions of spiritualism threatened the quote-unquote higher order of the world based on a general causality.
Okay.
So his colleague, Gustav Theodor Fechner, however, who had been a guy who had taken part in the Zolner Slade seances, he was like more in favor of like supporting the paranormal phenomena. He had like this is why parapsychology is so weird. Because it gets kind of codified this way in that like we have equal parts represented of skeptics and believers and semi-believers all trying to do the same thing.
Okay.
It's really weird. Really weird.
So a lot of people kind of working at odds with each other to create this thing. That's interesting.
Yeah. Another controversy at this time was something called the Animism versus Spiritism Debate. This is connected with the names of Edward von Hartmann and Alexander Axelko. Hartmann's book called Der Spiritismus in 1885 was the first attempt to give a complete psychological explanation of all occult phenomena, including subjective delusions as well as, quote, objective physical manifestations, without resorting, however, to hypotheses of ghosts, demons, or fraud.
So trying to make actual...
There is something happening here,
yeah.
But we have a scientific explanation for what's happening.
Interesting. Okay. That would be interesting to look at, like, because anytime you see something like that that's trying to fully debunk a thing and it's before a lot of scientific concepts that we now think of as normal were really around.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to see how they worked around it. Like the people very like matter-of-factly talking about black bile and shit.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It's interesting.
Or it makes me think of the custodian UFOs and like them like a lot of the like weird like pre-germ theory stuff that people were throwing out to try and understand how like illness was working, and how their inability to understand germs led to all those years later people theorizing that UFOs were like spraying the planet with like diseases. So
yeah, they're crop dusting us with like space tuberculosis,
Yes.
All right.
Axico's rejoinder, Animismus und Spiritismus, in 1890, criticized the hallucinations hypothesis for not being able to deal with objective physical manifestations. So they're like, hey, I really like this. You have a hallucination theory. However, let me just stop you right there. What am I holding here?
Yeah. What is all this goop that I'm holding?
Yeah.
If you're saying it's a hallucination.
Yeah, I think it was really just that, like, I don't have specifics on what that was dealing with because I don't have access to the books that they're coming from. But basically, there was a hallucination theory to all. It's like, well, we can explain all of these phenomena with hallucinations, and there were obviously some where it simply could not stand.
Yeah, sometimes there's a tactile thing to it that can't be accounted for unless you're talking about hard light holograms.
Yeah.
And that's where we're gonna fix all of this stuff is by employing hard light holograms to everything.
So the decade between 1880 and 1890 was dominated by the philosopher Karl Duprel and his Psychologische Gesellschaft, founded in 1886 in Munich, which dealt mainly with the possible religious or mystical significance of occult phenomena as an underpinning of an idealistic. They use a German word here, but it in short means ideology. Empirical work, if any, concentrated on demonstrations of a telepathic rapport under hypnotic influence. Under the leadership of Albert Baron von Schrenck-Notzing, Max Dessoir, who I mentioned before, and Albert Moll, a new society, the Gesellschaft für Experimental Psychology, was founded in Berlin in 1889, the very year when Dessoir published his seminal article, Die Parapsychology, in the journal Sphinx. A reactivation of researchers can be observed in 1914 when Schrenck-Notzing's much debated book Materializations Phenomenon. Can't do it.
We're gonna start using Patreon money to get some Rosetta Stone going, just start learning German, French, Russian, so we can actually have Japanese, so we can actually have these fucking episodes.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Even if you told me how to pronounce that, it would take many tries for me to get it down.
That's why you got to do Rosetta Stone or Duolingo every day, because then it's gonna bake into your brain,
Yeah. So
otherwise, that little owl son of a bitch is gonna scream at you.
He's gonna fuck me up.
Yeah.
Over in England, in particular in London, parapsychology in the second. So that's Germany, by the way.
Yeah.
Which like it's like more institutionalized version of parapsychology is coming towards the end of the 19th century. It's a little different in other places.
Okay.
So in England, in particular London, parapsychology in the second half of the 19th century is a bit different. It's here that we get the first major push to attempt to legitimize psychical research as an academic discipline. In the 1950s, the popularity of spiritualism in England had grown enormously. Over time, this explosion of popularity allowed spiritualism, like I'd mentioned before, to become a bit of a lucrative racket.
Okay.
Many saw these money-making mediums and demonstrations as the disingenuous hogwash that they were, including people who were followers of the spiritualist movement.
So there were sometimes the call was coming from inside the house. Okay.
Yeah. So what better way to combat the grift than to try and research and educate? Right?
That's what I've been told.
So,
but I've seen might have seen evidence for the contrary in our world.
Yeah. So we had a meeting between Sir William Fletcher Barrett, who is a physicist, and Dawson Rogers, who is a spiritualist. And they talked together in January of 1882 about this problem. Both concerned.
It's the Bill Nye versus who was it that he had a debate with?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, it's time. Oh, there was a time when like a libertarian motherfucker had a debate with Bill Nye, and everyone there was a whole thing. It was an internet thing. Yeah.
Well, they weren't debating. They were just like, one was a spiritualist who believed in the phenomena and the other one was a guy who didn't. And they were both like, man, it's fucked up that people make a lot of money like faking this shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's messed up. So they have this conversation in 1882, and this leads to the formation of a small group. And this group took it upon themselves to investigate these claims and a number of different debatable phenomena in a scientific manner, using the same standards and methods carried out by scientists of the day. For example, this is observation and experimentation.
It's the BPRD.
Yes.
Making the BPRD.
Yeah. So in February of 1882, the Society of Psychical Research, or SPR, was established in London. The founding members also included a group of Cambridge honorary fellows, Henry Sidgwick, who was a philosopher, Frederick Myers, who was a classical scholar and poet, and Edmund Gurney, who was a psychologist. What?
Who do we need for this parapsychological like research team?
The poet.
We need a poet.
Well, they got to have somebody render the sessions in beautiful poetry.
Look, he's a scholar too. He's probably very helpful to the cause, but seeing someone listed as a poet for this thing is just kind of funny.
We also had a number of notable spiritualists who joined, including Reverend William Stainton Moses, Morel Theobald. In all, the society held an assorted group of believers, skeptics, scientists, and spiritualists from different social backgrounds, which is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
However, and we're not going to be able to really get into this in this episode, this would turn out to be a problem.
Really? Yeah. Trying to get a bunch of different religions to agree about the fucking, like, paranormal is going to be a problem eventually?
It's a little difficult.
Okay.
The formation of London Society for Psychical Research would be foundational for all of parapsychology moving forward. In the years following the SPR's inception, both France and America would form their own psychical research institutions, often with a pretty similar model. So the American Society for Psychical Research traces its origin to a visit by the physicist Sir William Barrett to Boston, Massachusetts, who I mentioned. This is in 1884. Barrett had been influential, like I said, in getting the original SPR together in Britain, and he hoped to repeat his success in the United States. He went to Boston because psychologist and philosopher William James of Harvard had shown an interest in psychic phenomena. The first organizing meeting for the ASPR was held in September of 1884. It was a committee of 9 persons, including James, met throughout October and November, with the first meeting of the new society held in December of 1884, concluding in January 1885. Astronomer Simon Newcomb was elected president. 5 vice presidents, including psychologist G. Stanley Hall, were installed as well.
That's a lot of vice presidents. I'm not one to like call out their corporate structure here, but their organizational flowchart. But that seems like a lot of vice presidents for me.
Well, what I have not mentioned is the fact that everybody who is not the immediate president of the group is a vice president.
Oh, good. That's the best way to do a fucking organization. Oh, okay.
And then in 1885, this was when they founded the first French institution devoted both to psychology and parapsychology. This is the Société de Psychologie Physiologique.
I'm just imagining an organization that has both psychology and parapsychology, but like on 2 wings of a building. So, and like there's like the decoration is split right down the middle between like people looking into like seances and occult with like velvet drapes and shit, and like just books and couches and stuff for the regular psychological side.
It's kind of like in like that Fire Emblem game. You have like one wing that's like dedicated to people like throwing spears and sword fights, and then there's another wing where people are like shooting fireballs at each other. There's like the magical parapsychology, and the thing is, they are really trying to get it treated as a legitimate academic thing.
It makes sense, and I love when people treat this kind of stuff and try to treat it as science. Like, I love the attempt to figure out scientifically what cryptids are. Yeah. I think that's like one of my favorite things to look into when it comes to cryptids, because it's fascinating how we try to like take these things that most people just write off and take them very seriously and like look into the specifics of how it could be feasible. So this is great.
Yeah.
It's just really funny to think of these two things coexisting.
The idea to me, like the reason I love this so much is exactly what you just described, and also the fact that people were born, like this movement ended up traveling around the world and creating multiple institutions for academic research on it, mostly on the fact that people are like, these spiritualists have got to stop grifting the communities. Like they got to stop it, and we have to prove it. So we have the Société de Psychologie Physiologique, SPP, let's call it that.
Sure.
This is the first psychological society and was modeled on the Society for Psychical Research, founded in London. And it covered hypnosis and psychical research, also carrying out studies on altered states of consciousness induced by drugs and on ordinary psychophysiology. The driving forces were physiologist Charles Richet and Polish scientist Julian Ochorowicz. Oh man, that's no good. That can't be how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
Apologies. Neurologist Jean-Martin Charcot served as president, and psychologist Theodule Ribot and philosopher Paul Janet as vice presidents. And I think that's where we got to stop with part 1 for now.
Okay.
So we have formed multiple parapsychology institutions around the world, and they all are doing it in such a way that it is a smorgasbord of different types of people.
They're trying to bust out all the grifts. They're trying just to make sure that you're not being taken in and hoodwinked by these damn seance artists, by these damn spiritualists. And they're here to save you. So frankly, shouts out to them.
And here's the thing, parapsychology and psychical research, it's still around, baby.
Oh yeah.
And I even saw, and we'll get into this later, but I even saw there seems to be a university offering parapsychology in Europe still.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I don't know what it entails, but maybe we can dig into that in the next episode a little bit.
We're gonna fundraise on our Patreon to send you to parapsychology school.
I would love to go to a European parapsych. If I had known that I could go to school for like psychology of the paranormal, I would be so down.
Yeah,
so down. So that's part 1. There will be a part 2. And it's a lot. We've got a lot more to talk about.
I love these episode types that you're starting to do where it's just like, I'm going to pick a thing and here's just the history of it. And it's usually, these are almost always multi-part episodes. And I feel like the first one was when you're looking at like EVP and shit.
Yeah.
Back then.
It's
interesting.
I'm fascinated where these weird and fringe and paranormal and stuff, where these ideas come from.
Yeah.
However,
interested. We will not become a history podcast. I refuse. Because then I have to research history.
As long as I can find history of weird subjects like this, I will do historical topics.
Yeah.
And I can cover all of that. But no, we're not a history podcast. No. I just think that the history of these weird ideas is cool as fuck. And,
it rules.
I'm super into it. We now, like I said, we have schools of parapsychology, and that's where we're going to leave it for episode 1. So, Nile.
Yeah.
That leads me to the big question.
What you got for me?
If we were to form a contemporary It Gets Weird Society for Psychical Research, who would you like to have as foundational members, or I guess vice presidents?
I mean, first off the bat, we need Zach Bagans.
Yeah.
And on the other side, to balance him out, we need Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Of course.
Yeah. Or how about a version of Neil deGrasse Tyson that still has the same unwillingness to have fun, but maybe without the assault allegations?
Yeah, that would be cool.
So not just pencil in a Neil deGrasse Tyson type.
Yeah.
But not him specifically.
Okay, I like that. So we have like a Neil deGrasse Tyson like killjoy like nerd on the one hand, and then Zach Bagans on the other, and maybe we like put him in a pit. Like the Institute, and like
if we're ever bored, we just like put them in a room together and see if they kill each other.
Yeah.
But I feel like those are like the far ends of either side of the spectrum of like everything is rational, everything is like science, nothing can even be cool or fun. It's all boring.
Yeah.
And then Zach Bagans being the like all of this shit is
all real. Yeah,
everything is.
I like that. I really like that. I would really like to include. Oh no. I suddenly forgot his name.
Okay. Well, our Ministry of Defense person is going to be Bruce Campbell.
Okay.
He's gonna take up kind of the basic defense and safety protocols.
Well, I was gonna say To the Stars Academy founder
Tom DeLonge.
Tom DeLonge.
He's more aliens though.
I know, but the thing is, I think we could get him to branch out.
Okay.
I know he's really into aliens, but I feel like with a very simple conversation, I could get him to be curious enough to research other phenomena out there.
Well, he is very scientific minded, but in the way of science of alien materials and shit.
Right.
So I think that you could get him into trying to explain the goo that runs under the New York in Ghostbusters 2, you know?
Yes.
The ectoplasm rivers in that movie.
Yeah, I would like that. I just think that it's cool that he's doing this bullshit right now with the Academy and leaking all these tapes and stuff, but he gives me the impression that maybe he hasn't seen that we have declassified MK Ultra documents about remote viewing and stuff. Maybe he needs a little bit of a push to see there's an entire other world to research there. And then I think beyond him, I would like to get Weird Al.
Okay. See, I was gonna say Whoopi
Goldberg.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because she was in Ghost.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I've never seen Ghost.
I haven't either.
But I'm thinking Weird Al mainly because he's kind of like a wild card pick, sort of like your I guess Neil deGrasse Tyson isn't really a wild card pick, but the way I see Weird Al in my company, in my institution, my academy, is kind of honestly similar for my argument for Tom DeLonge, which is that I think it would take very little convincing. I think Weird Al is about to retire, touring music and stuff. And
get him a nice office job.
Right. Maybe
light retirement.
Yeah, we could get him an office job where he helps me run this place. And I think he would take very little convincing that he could help research weird phenomena.
Okay, so he does have a lot of history with the world of weird.
Yeah.
Because he is Weird Al. So yeah, I think that actually makes a lot of sense. That's a good pick.
And at the end of the day, it would just be really cool to hang out with Weird Al and talk about ghosts with him.
I'm with that.
It'd be kind of fun.
I feel like we hit 5 people already, so I feel like that's kind of a good amount of VPs.
Because of course you and me.
Yeah, we gotta be at the top of the food chain.
Yes, no doubt.
And
Co-presidents.
We'll bring Garrett. We've got a position for you.
Garrett will be there.
Message us offline, and we'll figure it out.
Garrett, who's definitely listening to this episode.
Yeah.
So that's part 1 of the history of parapsychology and psychical research. I think that about wraps this one up for now.
All right, then let's go ahead and take care of some business. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can follow us at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers, from Stitcher to Google Play to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird, and we're almost certainly there.
ItGetsWeirdPodcast@gmail.com. We'll take all your emails, any and all. Well, be reasonable.
Yeah.
But we'll take your emails. We love getting emails. We might read them on the show, and we'll definitely eat them. That's a guarantee. Patreon.com/ItGetsWeird. We have a $2 tier and a $5 tier. At the $2 tier, you get access to a bonus show. We're doing It Gets Weird TV. Every other week, we're talking about a weird TV show. Currently, we're watching season 2 of Gravity Falls. On the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV, if you want an extra bonus episode, you're going to want to donate to the $5 tier, where currently we got Morbed Up. It was some serious Morbius shit.
Yeah, we watched Morbius, and there's a bunch of different shows on that tier. It's fun stuff.
Yeah, we do a bunch of different stuff. So at the $5 tier, you get bonus material every single week. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to our mainline episodes 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday. And you get access to our Discord, where we're hanging out, talking about Morbius, our favorite scenes from Morbius, who our favorite Morbius characters
We have to stop talking about Morbius after this week, because if you're not in the Discord, there's no foundation for that meme to be on the main show.
I think Morbius is an exciting product that everybody's talking about, not just our Discord now. So
I mean, KFC was tweeting about it and got it going viral today. Cool. So
we love KFC too. This episode was sponsored by KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
I'm actually
good.
I'm more of a Popeyes kind of person.
I think you need to edit that out of this episode for our sponsorship.
Fair.
We also have a $1 tier where you don't get anything. You're just kicking us a tip. You're saying, hey, this is my favorite podcast about weird stuff and Morbius and KFC. So check that out. If you can't donate, please tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird. We will be back for the history of parapsychology part 2 in the next episode.
Thank you all for listening. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Nile.
And I'm Kyle signing out.